Okay, hi, it's Miss Gross. So here's another cool rhyming book. The same people that did Iggy Peck Architect wrote this book, and it's Rosie Revere, Engineer. And I want you to be thinking about while we're reading it, after we read it, think about what it means to be a persistent problem solver. We've talked about that in class, and um, you'll see. So this is Rosie Revere, Engineer by Andrea Beatty, illustrated by David Roberts. Sorry, sometimes it's hard for me to turn the page in this thing. So here's this beautiful page with all this stuff in it, things that engineers build and supplies you might have in Makerspace. I just like this page because it has lots of drawings on it and they're really colorful. Rosie Revere, Engineer. Okay, and I want you guys to read along with me. That's why I'm putting the cursor under the words. Okay, so you can be reading along with me. And again, this is a fun one. It's a rhyming book again. This is the story of Rosie Revere, who dreamed of becoming a great engineer. In Lila Greer's classroom at Blue River Creek, young Rosie sat shyly, not daring to speak. Remember Lila Greer? She was Iggy's teacher too. This is a second grade teacher. But when no one saw her, she peeked in the trash for treasures to add to her engineer's stash. And late at night, Rosie rolled up her sleeves and built in her hideaway under the eaves. So eaves are usually something that hang over. It's usually on a building, but it looks like she was like using these benches. Or we haven't seen her hideaway. Alone in her attic, the moon high above, dear Rosie made gadgets and gizmos she loved. And when she grew sleepy, she hid her machines far under the bed where they'd never be seen. Wonder why she didn't want anybody to see her creations that she made. We love to show people our creations. When Rosie was young, she had not been so shy. She worked with her hair swooping down over one eye and made fine inventions for uncles and aunts, a hot dog dispenser, and helium pants. There's the helium pants. He's floating away. The uncle she loved most was zookeeper Fred. She made him a hat to keep snakes off his head. From parts of a fan and some cheddar cheese spray, which everyone knows keeps the pythons away. So here's the hat. And when it was finished, young Rosie was proud. But Fred slapped his knee and he chuckled out loud. He laughed till he wheezed and his eyes filled with tears, all to the horror of Rosie Revere. She looks pretty horrified right there. Who stood there embarrassed, perplexed, and dismayed. Perplexed means confused. She looked at the cheese hat and then looked away. I love it, Fred hooted. Oh, truly I do. But Rosie Revere knew that could not be true. She stuck the cheese hat on the back of her shelf, and after that day she kept her dreams to herself. And that's how it went until one autumn day, her oldest relation showed up for a stay. Her great-great-aunt Rose was a true dynamo. Somebody has a lot of energy. Who'd worked building airplanes a long time ago. So that must be the young Rose up here. She told Rosie tales of the things she had done and goals she had checked off her list one by one. She gave a sad smile as she looked to the sky. The only thrill left on my list is to fly. But time never lingers as long as it seems. I'll chalk that one up to an old lady's dreams. Lingers means stays around. That night, as Rose lay wide-eyed in her bed, a daring idea crept into her head. Could she build a gizmo to help her aunt fly? She looked at the cheese hat and said, no, not I. But questions are tricky, and some hold on tight, and this one kept Rosie awake through the night. So when dawn approached and red streaks lit the sky, young Rosie knew just how to make her aunt fly. She worked and she worked till the day was half gone, then hauled her cheese copter out onto the lawn to give her invention a test just to see the ridiculous flop it might turn out to be. A flop is something that doesn't work. Strapped into the cockpit, she flipped on the switch. The helio cheese copter sputtered and twitched. It floated a moment and whirled round and round, then froze for a heartbeat and crashed to the ground. Then Rosie heard laughter and turned round to see the old woman laughing and slapping her knee. She laughed till she wheezed and her eyes filled with tears, all to the horror of Rosie Revere, who thought, "Oh no, never, not ever again will I try to build something to sputter or spin, or build with a lever, a switch, or a gear, and never will I be a great engineer." She turned round to leave, but then Great-Great-Aunt Rose grabbed hold of young Rosie and pulled her in close, and hugged her and kissed her and started to cry. "You did it! Hooray! It's the perfect first try! This great flop is over. It's time for the next." Young Rosie was baffled, embarrassed, perplexed. Again, perplexed is confused. "I failed," said dear Rosie. "It's just made of trash. Didn't you see? The cheese copter crashed." "Yes," said her great aunt, "it crashed, that is true. But first it did just what it needed to do. Before it crashed, Rosie, before that, it flew." "Your brilliant first flop was a raging success. Come on, let's get busy and on to the next." She handed a notebook to Rosie Revere, who smiled at her aunt as it all became clear. Life might have its failures, but this was not it. The only true failure can come if you quit. They worked till the sun sneaked away to its bed. Aunt Rose tied her headscarf round Rosie's head and sent her to sleep with a smile ear to ear, to dream the bold dreams of a great engineer. So we can do it. Being persistent. At Blue River Creek, all the kids in grade 2 built gizmos and gadgets and doohickeys too, which with each perfect failure they all stand and cheer, but none quite as proudly as Rosie Revere. So, I wanted to read you this book, especially because we talk about this in the makerspace, being persistent, which means you might do something one time and it's not perfect or it doesn't work at all, but then you try again and you try to make it better. Or you might make something that works okay, but maybe it could work better. So when you're making at home and when we come back to school and you're making, I want you to remember this. It's really important that when something doesn't work, that's not bad. That's something you learn from. And one of the things I'm going to be showing you throughout some of these videos, I'm going to show you all my prototypes that didn't work, or that you can see that I made many prototypes, because the first one maybe was okay, but it didn't do exactly what I wanted, or I figured out a way I could make it better. And I'm going to show you and tell you about several different things just by making it. Then I learned something that helped me on a different project, which happened with some chairs I made, and then this Minecraft giraffe that I made. I started making it one way, and then I learned something from making the chairs, and I ended up making it a different way. So every time it doesn't work exactly the way you want it, you learn something. And engineers do that all the time. There's never just one prototype. They don't make it the first time and it's perfect and they don't do anything else. Right? They say, okay, so here's my first prototype. Let's see if I can make it better. Or let's see what doesn't work, and we're going to fix it. So that's what being an engineer and a maker is all about. You never just make once. You always keep going. Now, sometimes in makerspace at school, we don't have time to make a bunch of prototypes. That's okay. Because I think of it as when you're in one class and you make something, you learn something for the next class. So the next class might be your next prototype. Especially when you guys do free make, you learn a lot. So this is about Rosie Revere, the engineer. And I just want you to keep that in mind. It was a super fun book to read because of the rhyming. And then we'll have a little project that will go with this that I'll probably stick on the end of this, but for right now, at least you can get the idea of the book and do the read along with me and have fun trying out stuff at home. Bye-bye.